gotta ask yourself whether reality is a dream. Are you a dream for reality? We're all a part of the answer to the meaning of it all. Trying to join us for the moment we call now. Rise up, join in, raise the whole vibration.
Ho! Hello, 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 and welcome to the live stream of consciousness. Yes, I usually have a little bit of a ritual I do with the bowl, but I just felt the urge to start it at the end of the song and jump right into the show. It's Thursday, June 12th. At least that's what we've all agreed to call it, so that we could all show up at the same time. That joke will never get old to me. It's amazing because that's really the truth about everything. I want to say hello to Ninja Kitty and Tim, who are always here, and also Donna Bond, who is here. Welcome, welcome. I saw Donna's show recently, and I love her energy. We were talking about getting her on this show. So I'm excited about that. But I am super pumped. I was already like charging up my energy right before the show with my guest in the green room. I don't usually do that. I usually like wait till the very last second, and I don't like to get into conversation so that it can be more organic for you. But we just did. We just naturally did because I think the energy is so aligned, and it really makes me happy because I mean, here's somebody who I never met who's like halfway across the world, just aligned vibrationally. And just to know that there are people out there like that gives me so much hope, especially in a day like today, if you turn on the news at all. So I just don't turn on the news, and I would recommend that too. But because there are a lot of good people out there and a lot of good things happening, there's a lot of love on the earth, and I think that's what I want to contribute to it. So that's what I want to focus on. I try not to give the other stuff so much energy. I give it respect because it's got to be there. But I just focus on the now. And that was something that I was talking about with Suri, who's my guest tonight. I'm going to bring her on in just a second. But this moment right here, the live stream of consciousness, it's amazing because it comes from an intention of being in the moment, having a moment that I created so that I can talk to somebody as amazing as Suri, so that I can sit in front of you guys and put out this vibration to anybody who's out there to receive it. And if you're here, you're probably receiving it intentionally. So I appreciate that. And if you are here, just to kind of help tickle the algorithm, do me a favor and type #live in the comments, or just type in a space and hit enter. You don't even have to make a comment, but it helps tickle the algorithm. It helps, the world out there know that there's some good stuff going on and spreads the word. But anyway, I want to get started with tonight because it's going to be a lot of fun. I met Suri on Tuesday on Holding Space, and she's just incredible. She's a death doula. She's a multidimensional healer. She does so many things. And I just found out minutes ago that she lives in Costa Rica and runs a hostel. And I just got chills hearing that because that's just such an honorable way to live. And it's just right in the line of what we were just talking about, manifestation. Whoop, whoop, live. Donna, thank you. Kim, Princess, thank you, live. Good to see you guys out there. Anyway, so I'm excited to learn more about Costa Rica because I think I'm about to head there. You know what? I know I'm about to head there. And I'm excited to do it. So let's bring onto the live stream of consciousness, Suri Sawyer. What's up, Suri?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing delicious and delightful. Thanks for inquiring. And you?
Delicious. A wonderful answer. I love it. I noticed last week, and I forgot to say it. So I'm gonna say it now so that everybody can see it and know, and everyone's gonna not be able to unsee it. But the way that you're sitting there with your backdrop, you have this like halo around your head, this angel thing. And when I did some shorts from it, I was like, oh, look at that. That's so cool. It looks so cool. And it's just so reflective of your energy. So I think it's great.
Thank you so much.
So we did pretty much jump into it in holding space in a free-form conversation about all things, metaphysical and multidimensional, but this is the live stream of consciousness. So
Yeah.
I've got to start with my traditional question just to kind of get your little piece of the puzzle. And just so you know, there is no wrong answer to this question.
Oh, I know.
And that question is, what is consciousness? What are we talking about?
Okay, so I'm going to answer your question with another question. What
Of course.
is consciousness?
Ooh, I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. And you know what? I don't think there is an answer to that question, because even if I say nothing, I feel like nothing has a consciousness.
Right. Nothing is something and something is nothing. When I was contemplating this question, I kept finding myself in the void.
Oh my God, you're the master.
I
You are
was
the
like,
master.
what is consciousness? And then I was in the void, which I love Alan Watts when he says, you take someone to the void and they're like, it's just nothing. And he's like, just nothing? Nothing is everything. And simultaneously, it's a paradox. Everything is nothing and nothing is everything. And consciousness is like everything exists within consciousness.
Mhm.
And I also was contemplating the Sufi and Kundalini phrase, if you don't see God in all, you don't see God at all.
I like that. I never heard that one, actually. That's a great
Mhm.
one. I'm surprised I never heard that. But I got to tell you, you've put me in this place now. I'm like, do I end the show now? That was it. That was like, that was the ultimate answer that I never got. And it's like, all right, folks, took 200 and whatever episodes, but I think we finally answered the question.
It's simultaneously everything and nothing at the same
I
time.
love it. I love it. So great. So great.
Yeah. I also was reflecting on when I left religion and I went and studied everything that I could. And I had this teacher, he was a Jewish rabbi, and he was teaching me about Jewish mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
And he was taking me through the Sephirots, the Jewish tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
And each one had a very in-depth explanation of what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got to the top one and he said, this one we can't talk about because the moment you start to talk about it, you lose it. And so I feel like that's consciousness. The moment we start to talk about it or describe it, we could lend it all of the words that exist on human existence, and it still would never capture it.
You're right. You're right. And I think on that note, I think I am going to probably change the protocol here, because I feel like that answer was the ultimate, right? But I have gotten the answer before where somebody said to try to describe it would be unjust, and I agree with that. I feel like as human beings, our vernacular, our language, we're just not able to even express it, even if we were able to comprehend it fully, which we're not. Oh, hello, kitty.
Hi.
We still wouldn't be able to express it. I feel like it's divine. That's really like the only possible word that we have to encompass everything about it. But so now I got to figure out what to do. I got to figure out a new shtick for the live stream of consciousness. That's all right. I like a challenge.
Something that I love about the name of the show. Can I share a short story?
Please. That's
Okay.
what the show's about.
Perfect. So I grew up in the way I grew up, I was always taught, like find a man, find a husband, like get married, like do the thing. I also had Disney princess influence, you name it, right? And so I got married really young and I thought, okay, like I've made it. I've done the things I'm supposed to do. And then after a while, I was like, whoa, this is not what I want at all. And so I ended up smashing that reality into 1,000 pieces. And as it was happening, my egoic persona was crumbling. And I was left with sitting in social situations without knowing how to interact, because almost all of my interactions came from programs that I built. And they were real and true, But if somebody asked me, how are you? I would always have the same answer. Oh, I'm this, right? And so it was a series of egoic programs that were running.
Yeah.
But after I started the process of disassembling what I had built, I was left with only my live stream consciousness. And I remember being at a table with a bunch of people and having this sensation that I had no idea how to talk anymore or communicate because my persona was obliterated. And then something suddenly came over me and it was like, just live stream yourself. You don't have to have something in the queue to answer a question. You can just be in your essence and live stream your soul.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what would that be like?
Ooh.
And I feel as though I've been live streaming my essence for the most part ever since, and operating outside of egoic structures and just allowing this thing. I never know what I'm about to say. I never know what I'm about to do. I'm live streaming my consciousness.
I love it. I love it. And what's cool about it with you in particular, because I'm sure there are people who do that who don't come off the way you do, it all makes sense. There's a real beauty and coherence to the wisdom that you speak about. I think that's great. And you mentioned something that I don't talk about much, but I do feel like it was an important part of my own, kind of evolution. And that is the awareness of ego, right? And you said, I like the way you said you kind of disassembled it, right? Because a lot of times, and myself included, I remember I'd be like, oh no, I got rid of my ego. I killed it. I killed my ego. And I realized, later, like, wait a second, that's not a good thing. Ego is there for a reason. And there are good parts of ego. It's when you operate from ego and like you were talking about those egoic kind of practices and rituals and just beliefs, that I think it makes it more difficult, right? Like Disney princess, that's a perfect thing, right? I mean, it's like how it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. I love to see people who are really passionate about it because you can see that it lights them up, right? But to me, it's pretty removed from reality in one way. And then in another way, it's like what we were talking about earlier, you make your own reality, right? So why can't someone have that reality? You know what I mean? It's like, it's what makes us all beautiful.
I have a question for you.
Here we go.
All right. So in the same consciousness of what is consciousness, what is ego? And also all of you watching, I'd love to see your answers.
Let's make this interactive.
What's an ego?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So to me, ego, the negative part of ego is kind of separating yourself from everybody else and trying to be better, right? Trying to feel like you're superior, right? Which is why I feel like a lot of people on social media put other people down, right? It's the first thing that I think, like, it's so obvious you're just trying to feel better about yourself, you know what I mean? And I think the good part of ego is the love of self, right? Is knowing that, yes, I'm connected to everything, but I'm a unique part of everything. I'm a unique part of it. So I've got to love myself in order to appreciate everybody else. You know what I mean? And Donna says the operating system. I love that answer.
I know. I love that answer. I was like, yes, it is. It's the operating system. Yeah.
And it's really, and it's again, it's not a matter of, get rid of the ego. It's how you navigate the ego, how you use that operating system, right? And Leela says this ego means you, and I think that it more goes with the word egotistical is the word that I think people have heard that means that, right? You're egotistical. You're all about yourself. Right. You don't seem to care about other people. And that's the thing that I think is important to break from. And not your ego in general.
I want to, I've had this mission for a while to rewrite the way that we talk about the ego. And I love what Jennifer Rose is saying here is I love my ego. I love your ego too, Jennifer Rose. It's
We
awesome.
both do. Yes, your ego is awesome. You know what? You constantly do this to me, Suri. You're constantly like flipping the switch, flipping away. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Like ego. I think it's something that everybody needs to see what it is and understand what it is, and not just be like, oh, ego sucks, or even when I say, oh, you operate from ego, you don't operate from the heart. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe operating from the ego, as long as you're doing it with love, right? You can operate from the ego, but still with the heart. I guess that's what I've just learned in this moment,
Yeah.
And Jennifer loves yours too.
I thank you for letting
And
me
Donna,
know.
look, so I love it. People come equipped when they come to my show. They come with their pockets full of love because they know it'll be just, oh, here's some for you, here's some for you, here's some for you. That's great.
Ego, when used properly, is part of what drives you to achieve. While positive believing you've already achieved it. Yeah. Okay. I love this one. Know thyself,
welcome.
Jennifer says. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Awesome.
Yes. We can't be here without it. That's a comment. Thank you, Donna. I really resonate with that. I feel like I love Carl Jung's perspective on the ego. And this idea that we are all one. And in this human experience, it's a novelty to be separated. It's a novelty, Michael, that I can sit here and look at you as if you're a different being than me.
Right.
And if without the egos, there would be no conversation. There would be no exploration.
That's right.
And so there's something really beautiful about the construction of the ego. It makes us very unique. We're all our own little gems, and with our own unique perspective of whatever reality and consciousness is that can't be spoken about.
Right. Totally.
And,
Absolutely.
I enjoy this concept that we can't be here without it, and that our ego is it acts as in two ways. It can be something that is like argumentative, because when the ego is in a defensive state, the ego is supposed to protect you, right? So if the ego is going through superiority games and these different things, it's in a state of agitation, and it wants to protect itself and put itself above sometimes. Or you guys, sometimes the ego feels very comfortable being below. So sometimes people are like, I always take the lower route and let other people be superior because that's where I like to be.
Interesting. Interesting. And something else I was thinking about, because I guess this is what I was thinking. Man, you have this crazy effect on my brain. Like when you were telling me, I was like, oh, where are you again? And you're like, in Costa Rica. I'm at a hostel. Immediately I was like, oh, she lives and she's staying at a hostel. And I respected that. I was like, that's such a great free way to live. I was envious of the idea of just traveling and being able to go wherever you want. And then you're like, oh yeah, no, I own the hostel. And I was just like, it was like blew my mind, because that's that even next level of free life, right? You've created this life that you can be in the middle of a jungle, of a beautiful place, meeting people of all sorts all the time. That's exactly where your energy needs to be. You just need to be like this energetic force, like that people need to, like you're this love mirror. People can come see you and then see the reflection of love in themselves, right? So, but what I was thinking was this, as far as ego, when you said to me you're in a hostel and even that you own a hostel, I was like relating to that and envious and like, oh, and thinking of myself, like I would love to do that. But then there are people who'd be like, ooh, I could never live in a jungle. I would never want to do that. And I think that's when their ego would come in and be like, start judging that, right?
Yeah.
And then that separation, I guess. And for me, that's one of the things I love about hearing all of these different stories, is like, even if I hear like, ooh, I wouldn't do that, I'm more like, ooh, tell me more,
What
like,
is that like?
what is that like? I would never do that. Ooh, but like in a good way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, really, really cool. And Donna Bond is hashtagging love mirror.
Love mirror. Thanks, Donna. Okay, I wanted to comment on something that was said in the comments earlier, and also you mentioned it, which is superiority.
Let me see if I can find that comment.
Yeah. Well, you said superiority, and then somebody else said the ego tries to
About
make
ego.
you
Yeah, yeah.
better than everyone else.
Hmm, hmm.
So this is actually a really funny game that I'd like to highlight with permission.
I don't know if it's possible to just grant you free permission to do anything you want, but you have it.
Okay.
I trust you completely.
Thank you. So I do observe when the ego, I think it's badass. Yeah, I think it's badass too, boo. All right. Um, so when there is this function in our reality, and it's called superiority.
Hmm,
And when the ego is malfunctioning, it can perceive itself superior to pretty much everyone and everything else.
hmm,
And what's interesting about that is the feeling when your ego is pushing you up all the time in a state of superiority, almost always it's an underlying sense of inferiority that causes the ego to inflate itself to the point that it perceives itself as constantly superior. And it's an illusion.
hmm, hmm, hmm.
Likewise, there's this like caretaker victim side of that. That's like it's like the other side of the coin,
Hmm,
where people secretly think that they are superior, but constantly in a social role put themselves underneath as inferior, because it actually gives them a sense of power to be inferior, which is very interesting. And these two tend to play on each other when we witness like maybe that more narcissistic tendency, which is I
Wow.
am superior,
Hmm,
and then the victimized tendency, which is I am inferior.
hmm.
And they enter the same game because they're actually on an underlying level operating from the same space.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
what I've been working on in myself and also in the world in general is to acknowledge that here in our egos, some people are superior to me,
Mhm,
not as a totality,
mhm,
not as a soul.
mhm,
But if someone has spent years studying the guitar and they're a guitar master,
mhm,
I, as not a guitar player, will acknowledge this person has superiority to me in this
mhm,
field.
mhm, mhm,
And or when someone's spent time studying and developing a skill, they are superior. And I wonder what our collective system would look like if we could honestly and genuinely honor the superiority another person has spent time using their ego to develop and let them have it.
mhm, mhm. You
Um,
know, I know exactly what it looks like.
right? What does it look like?
It looks like that, and it looks like that. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's why I even have a show. So I doing this show. I think I've told this story before, but bear with me, folks who've heard it. Doing this show, there was a girl who would listen to the show when Jesse was on. Her name was Courtney, and she would make comments, and we kind of just became friends through the comments. And one day she messaged me, and we started talking. You know, she lived in Alabama or something, and she said, I have an idea for a show. I want to do a show. And she was young. She was like in her 20s. To me, that's young. And she said, it's called Strange and um Strange and Unique or something. It was called Strange and something. And I'm like, explain to me what is that? What's the show? And she said, well, I'm in a relationship with a guy, but I'm also in a relationship with a doll. I have a life-size girl doll that I'm in a relationship with. And immediately I was like curious, like, what does that mean? How does that happen? Explain it. I wasn't like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? I was like, and I noticed that. I was like, why am I not freaked out about that? You know
I
what I
was a
mean?
little scared when you said it, honestly.
I-
Okay, but proceed.
but like I was genuinely like, it's listen, I say it out loud and it sounds weird. It sounds weird. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but in my heart, I'm not judging it, right? And so we had a little bit more of a conversation, and I said, why don't we call the show Strange and Wonderful?
Mm.
And we did. And this girl, she was like very shy. You would never. She just like she needed some work, but something inside me said she needs something to have a place to do that work. And it was just such a phenomenal experience. I did a bunch of episodes with her, and then I let her on her own. I was like, all right, time to fly, time to do your thing. And she got an interview with the creator of Roger Rabbit, because that was
Oh,
something that she loved. She liked to draw cartoons, and she used it as a vehicle to get conversations with amazing people. But I remember the first episode, I was having a conversation with this trans woman who also had a relationship with a doll. And it was the first time that I had a conversation with someone that I actually felt my heart and my head like expanding, just like being in the conversation.
yeah.
And just being there to understand. And we talked about like what happened to you when you were younger that made you who you are. And she was so vulnerable and open with me because of who I am, right? Like I made her feel safe, and that meant a lot to me. Even the fact that somebody who I don't know like that would open up to me like that. It made me realize who I was, and it was like, like I said to you, like we're all reflections of each other. And that's my favorite moment in meeting someone and getting to know them. It's like, oh, there I am. I see myself,
Yes.
it's beautiful.
There's this poem by Kabir, and it says, God and I become like two fat people in a tiny boat. We keep bumping into each other and laughing.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love that.
And that's how I feel too, where it's like, hey, that's me over there doing that thing.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes it's difficult, right? It's almost like it could be. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a professional, but would you consider that almost like shadow work? Like if you're interacting, let's say, with a homeless person, and you're just overwhelmed with emotions and like feelings, and you just want to kind of connect to that person and know them, or you just have an experience. I mean, I feel like that's almost like shadow work because of the emotion that's connected to it and the release that you feel from the whole experience. I mean,
Yeah.
it's dark and heavy, but it's also loving when you make it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do feel like when we encounter people we feel we can't understand or extremely agitate us, we're being reflected something powerful. And it varies, whatever it is that's being reflected. Sometimes we're watching someone do something that we know we already have the skills for. And we feel agitated because it's like, wait a second, why am I receiving this from you? I already know all of this. And it's inviting you to step more into yourself and individuate in a stronger way. Sometimes something or someone is standing in front of you or operating in your field, and it's causing some kind of judgment or agitation. And we get to ask ourselves, what in myself am I denying? And what part of me is this reflecting? Something I think it's important to be careful of is like, not everything is a direct mirror, right? So let's say that there's a woman who's in a physically abusive relationship. And if she were to take these spiritual tools and say, well, what part of me is abusive? That's a helpful directive. But also sometimes it's mirroring what part of me is okay to submit to that. And so the mirror isn't always just like a direct mirror, but it is always showing us something.
Yeah. Brilliant.
I think on the trajectory of moving toward like awakening and light, there is also a simultaneous call to address what is our shadow. Because just like at the beginning of this call, you were like, what is consciousness? And I was like, what is it not? And within our own sphere of consciousness, I perceive that our consciousness is a giant sphere, and that every single star in the sky is consciousness, and it's in its sphere of light emanating its consciousness. And even the black matter is consciousness in some form. And in my field of consciousness, there is the potential for everything that I could possibly manifest. I have the potential for everything. But because of my ego, I take the potential for everything and I put it through a structure, and it starts to form who you see in front of you now. And I really appreciate that within me is the potential for homelessness. Within me is the potential for violence. Within me is the potential for every shadow aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the opportunity with my ego to choose not to.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of that story of the little boy going to his grandfather and saying, Grandpa, there's two wolves inside of me. One of them is dark and
Yeah.
the other one is light and beautiful. Which one will win? And the
Mm-hmm.
grandfather says, whichever one you feed.
One of my favorites. That's such a great saying, and it's so great because it's a great way to look at it, right? And just be like, oh, wait a second, I get that. I get
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? It's so easy. What fun, Donna. I
What
told you I build the show tonight. I posted all over the place saying, you want to have fun tonight? Come to the show. It will guaranteed to be fun. So there you go. There's my validation. I love that.
I have one more sentiment to add to this too.
I want as many sentiments as you can possibly add until we gotta go.
Okay, perfect. So I've come to my own conclusion that for me, it's not actually possible to be a good person if I'm unaware of how awful I can be.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is the shadow work that you're speaking of. Like, I perceive that some people build their egos and their ego says, I'm a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do their operations from this belief that they're a good person. And they can actually be doing significant harm. But if they believe they're a good person, they can qualify everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I have gone into this like gorgeous deep dive of like, how awful can I be? Like, what am I capable of? I'm not saying I've acted it out.
Right.
I've let those voices in my mind speak.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I've been in states of like anger and rage,
Mm-hmm.
the ideas that my ego comes up with, I'm like, oh my God, that would feel so good. You're right. You're not going to do it.
Right.
But yes, you're right. That would feel really good to slash their tires.
Wow.
And I do perceive, Alan Watts says, if you don't know how horrible you can be, you can never be genuinely good.
Love it. I love it. I love Alan Watts. I love I don't know all of the, you said a couple things that I haven't heard, which I love because you've never heard it all, right? But I love that these little tidbits of wisdom that we're left with. And I love, the first time somebody told me, about Eckhart Tolle, like reading the book and how it affected them. And then like reading the book myself, it's just, it's really, it's great that we can, I don't want to say learn. I want to say remember these things and then just help others to remember because, it's obvious. It becomes obvious. Ooh, that person forgot. That person might have forgot, that kind of thing. Tim says, crazy coincidence. About a year before my daughter died, she put art up on a site with her friend and they were contacted by the creator of Roger Rabbit. He encouraged them to continue drawing.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Thank you,
awesome.
Tim.
Yes, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. So tell me more about this hostel in Costa Rica. Is it associated with healing and what you do outside of running a hostel? Do you do those kinds of things at the hostel? Is it so retreats and things like that kind of?
Yes. And so there's one thing I want to clarify. I don't own it. I wish I did.
Oh, okay. Run it.
I rent it.
Okay,
and,
you rent it.
It is, I feel perfectly placed.
Okay.
I have an awareness of who I am and like what I do and the effect that I have on people. Mm-hmm. And I think it's funny when people show up here and they're like, I don't know why I'm here. I just was guided here. And I'm like, oh, cool.
Cool. Let's find out.
Let's deconstruct your mind.
I love that. Wow.
Mm-hmm. And it ranges. Some people come just for a night. We live next to a mountain that people come here from all over the world to climb. So sometimes people come here just for the night and then they move on. But then we often get people who stay here for 2 weeks to a month or more. And it's usually those people that I'm like, oh, this is no coincidence. And I've found myself in a position, my favorite guest archetype is the lonely traveling female. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of young women right now that are out in the world just traveling around and they've been in a bunch of places. They've met a bunch of people. They've stayed in a lot of hostels. And when they get here, they're soul tired. And I feel like, okay, I'm rested. I'm well fed. I'm grounded. Welcome. How can I help you? And the form of assistance takes on 1,000 forms. And it could be something like as simple as cooking food. or even just having like family meals. Like a lot of people are missing that. And so
Mm-hmm.
we all get together in the kitchen, we cook, we eat together, and it's really beautiful. Before too long, every guest and I somehow get into some kind of existential conversation and we do the thing. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's also very beautiful.
Yeah.
I had a woman come through a couple of days ago, and when she got here, her eyes were super cloudy, and she was, what I would say, she was edging on psychosis.
Wow.
And I could see it. I was like, okay, come on in here. Let's get you rest. And she was telling these stories to me from an outside perspective. She was talking a lot about feeling like she's just realizing that the earth is a trap for souls, and she feels
Mm-hmm.
trapped and she wants to get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the opportunity to sit down with her and kind of investigate that a little bit more. And we whittled it down to this idea of, okay, you actually are just having suicidal ideation. And somehow your ego is broadcasting that as the entire world is a trap.
Mm-hmm.
But what if we just bring it back to you and you're going through something currently? And she was here for 3 days, and I did some work with her and some energy clearing and entity clearing. And by the time she left, her eyes were like clear as day.
Wow.
That fog that was over her eyes was just gone. And it was another one of those funny situations which she didn't know why she was here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I do. Do you need a nap? Like, but not just like a nap. Do you need a soul nap? And
Wow.
it felt good that I was here for that.
I can
Also,
only imagine. Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah, as people are awakening, a lot of people are coming to Costa Rica
Mm-hmm.
and going through a lot of processes of releasing the borders of their mind, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, a process we all actually need to go through. We need to really assess what cage we're living in,
Mm-hmm.
like how we've allowed our minds to be domesticated.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are breaking through some of the bars of domestication in their mind. And when
Mhm.
this happens, it feels like insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And Costa Rica attracts it. So a lot of people come here to release the borders of their mind, and then they go nuts. And it's gorgeous. And we all need a little help to walk that line.
Yeah.
So I feel like the place that I'm in right now is holding point on the grand awakening in a small way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's very rare that I feel like I'm talking to someone who's like got your energy, to exactly where you're supposed to be, exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? And as far as I don't feel bad, but I feel awakened to a conversation that we had on Tuesday about divine feminine empowering events, right? Because I think as much as like we talked about it, and I hold space for it and allow it, and your connection with it is much different, like much different, right? There's no trend, there's no, and I don't mean to put that onto anyone else, right? I'm not saying that anyone's doing it to be trendy, but there's no pretension to it. It's very, very pure, and exactly the way you described it, like a weary traveler kind of thing. That's real. I mean, that's real shit. You know what I mean? And that's amazing. So, congratulations to you. I'm really honored to have made this connection with you, and that you've come on my show twice already. I mean, you seem like a very powerful being.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing me.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
definitely do. Now Angelo was saying something interesting. He's saying you're explaining ayahuasca. What are your thoughts about plant medicine like ayahuasca and that kind of thing? Is that any part of your life? Have you done it and been there, done that kind of thing? Tell me.
So we're talking to Angelo.
Yep.
Okay, Angelo, I have something to tell you. My consciousness sometimes feels like it is ayahuasca. The effect I have on people feels like ayahuasca. And part of that is because I had a natural inclination toward that mind dissolving tendency. And then another part of that is my time spent in ayahuasca. And another part of that is spent learning from some of the indigenous people that have spent their entire lives doing ayahuasca. And it is interesting because I personally feel like I need to be careful when I am around people, because I do have, if I let myself be unleashed, I guess, I will dissolve your mind. And it feels like that. I've gone and stayed with friends. Yeah. I've gone and stayed with friends who have done ayahuasca. And when I'm at their house, by the time I leave, they were like, I feel like I've been on an ayahuasca trip this whole time. And I was like, you have been.
Wow. So
I,
people, they're saying it in reference to they've experienced ayahuasca, and then just being around you feels like being on ayahuasca. Wow,
yes.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I was in a relationship that just came to a close. And when we were closing our container, he said to me, you feel like ayahuasca to me. Like this
Wow.
whole relationship has felt like I've been in a relationship to ayahuasca. And I'm not claiming, like, again, I'm not claiming any kind of superiority or something. I just have sat in the ayahuasca space enough to recognize myself.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, some of you, so make a retreat. Yes, Angelo, let's make a retreat at the hostel. Will you come? Okay.
He will.
One of the things it took me a while to realize was I found myself going into psilocybin was my first medicine.
Okay.
And I found that through a woman who was a psychotherapist who also served psilocybin.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time that she took me into psilocybin, afterward, she was like, I've never seen anyone have that reaction to the medicine.
Wow.
And I had no context for any of this. So I was like, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I sat there on psilocybin, and I was having a conversation with my psyche, and I was reorganizing my own mind and like learning about relationships. I was having this very telepathic conversation with some spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and myself included. And she actually asked if I would be interested in learning how to hold space for psilocybin, because she had never seen anything like that before. So she started to teach me how to hold space in a therapeutic way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then that took me into learning about this other medicine called jurema. And it's a tree bark. It's NN-DMT, just like ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I told myself I'm never going to do ayahuasca. I don't need to.
Okay.
And
I haven't done it, and I kind of feel that way too. I'm super intrigued by the stories that I hear, because they're phenomenal, but I don't feel drawn to it, right? Specifically, right? I feel like it's supposed to draw you, right? If you're
it's supposed to call you. If you don't have the call, don't worry about it. Like, it's not for you in this lifetime. It's okay.
I'm there right now. You're my ayahuasca trip.
Hello, darling. So I started studying another medicine, and I got like deep into that. And
what is that? I never heard of that one.
jurema comes from the Mimosa hostilis tree, and they take the bark, and it has NN-DMT in it, which is the same psychoactive that's in ayahuasca.
Right.
And I spent a couple of years studying that underneath a teacher. And when I was in that experience, I did what's called a dieta. And it's when you basically only consume what the medicine says you're allowed to consume. That means food, music, things you see with your eyes, even people that you hang out with. So I did a 30-day dieta where I allowed the medicine to basically dictate what I could eat, what I could listen to, what I could watch, and who I could hang out with.
And how does it do that? It like tells you, like you just know, you just know.
There's certain protocols that already exist, but what I did was I sat down and I asked her, what can I eat? What should I avoid? What can I listen to? What can I not listen to? And then also when I was inside the dieta, I would start listening to something and get a very strong sensation, not this.
Wow.
Turn it off.
Wow.
And that significantly changed my frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And on the last day of my dieta, I went into a meditation, and I saw this spirit, the spirit, I guess, of jurema, come and breathe into my mouth. As I was inhaling, she was exhaling, and then vice versa. So we were breathing the same breath. And she said, you are me and I am you. There's no difference between us. And I said, okay. And it took me a long time to realize that other people don't communicate to psychedelics the same way that I do. And that's what makes it unique, is that I go into the space, or I don't even have to be in the space, but there's a telepathic communication that's very clear. And I think that's also that function in me that can just kind of talk to the spirit of the medicine is also the same function in me that is so similar that it feels like when I'm in your presence, if you open up to me enough, I'll probably dissolve the borders of your mind, but it's because I love you.
Sounds like ayahuasca, right? That's Mother Ayahuasca as far as I've heard it.
Yeah.
That's really incredible, Suri. I don't even you put me in another level with this now. Like, it's like first with the hostel, telling me about the hostel, and now telling me about this. Like, wow, my mind is really blown. You're
Am
right.
I dissolving the borders of your mind?
You dissolved my brain. You totally did it. So I guess, all jokes aside, you don't necessarily do retreats, but like if a visitor came through and you felt they were being called to something, would you help with that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. The medicine world is a crazy place, and there's a lot of people who do medicine work, and there's a lot of retreat centers that offer medicine work. It's everywhere. It's very prevalent right now. We're in the psychedelic renaissance. Something that I've observed a lot that's happening in the world is a mismanagement of plant medicine. And there's all these retreat centers that really just want your money, and they don't do qualified checks on people before they come to do the medicine. And then they hire people like me to come in and serve the medicine, but I haven't spoken to anyone. I haven't met anyone. I don't know anybody's background. I don't know anybody's history. And I did that once or twice and realized that that's incredibly dangerous on so many levels, but it was incredibly dangerous to my own spiritual self.
Sure.
And so before I moved to Costa Rica, I was doing medicine work on a word of mouth basis. When I came here, I started getting hired to do medicine work at these centers, and it totally changed my perspective.
Wow.
So I currently don't advertise that I do it. I don't go around offering it, but occasionally someone literally comes to the hostel and says,
I don't
hey,
feel like you need to. Yeah, I feel like the people will come to you, if they're called, and you seem to know what it is they might need. It's interesting because we recently did psilocybin, right? And we were intending to, elevate, but we didn't do it guided, and I think we didn't do it correctly. And it felt like we were just wasted, right? It was like it was I say that in two ways. I feel like we wasted the opportunity, right? And I felt like it was just not a great experience. And I think it didn't turn us off of the idea of using the medicine that way, but definitely more intentional with a guide, somebody preferably like you, it sounds like, because I agree. I feel like there are a lot of people doing a lot of things with psychedelics because it's available, because there's more information about it, or I think people do it without actually reading the information. It's just available, right? And I don't think it's for everybody. I mean, I think I've seen, like you, I would never have guessed that about you at all, because of the way you speak to me is very articulate, very clear, very purposeful. There's just an incredible flow to it. And I know people who have kind of done psychedelics, and like you can't even really hold a conversation with them, because they're just gone.
yeah,
And it's really sad. And so I definitely feel like psychedelics is a viable thing, but not for everybody, and it's got to be approached in a very specific, careful way.
I agree.
I have a good friend, Cody Snyder, who's Dee Snyder's son, and his wife, and they have a podcast called Acid for Squares, and basically it's a fucking phenomenal podcast, and they've had Daryl Anka on the show. They've had there's this guy who is doing these experiments with DMT and a laser. I don't know if you've seen that, where he's claiming he sees the code to the matrix. And it's like it's viral, and it's super interesting. They're speaking to him, and they also are advocates of plant medicine and have some amazing experiences and stories. And why was I bringing them up? I forget. I guess just to give them a shout out. Hey.
Shout out to what is it? LSD for squares?
Acid for squares.
Acid
Acid for squares. And there's some good stuff coming up with that. And I'm excited about that, but I'll leave that for another day. Oh boy, Suri. Again, this is so amazing. So amazing. What else can I even ask you? So you're incredibly in touch with yourself, with the world around you, with random travelers that come in and out of your life. You're really connected to that. Where do you see this all going? Are you just happy and you can see yourself doing this for the rest of your life?
That is an excellent question. Have you heard of the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer?
It does vaguely sound familiar. Describe it to me.
He wrote a book essentially about how he surrendered to life and the universe. And he got into the habit of when something would come to him, he just learned to say, yes, it's coming to me for a reason, or it excites me for a reason. I had been living that way for most of my life, but I thought something was wrong with me because I was observing the people around me start to, buy houses and have children and do these things that I guess were by maybe their soul was calling it, but maybe it was just to fulfill this prescription of life. And I just never felt like I could do that. And so I was living a life of the surrender experiment. I was like, well, something's going to come toward me and it'll be the right thing. And certain things will move away from me and that'll be the right thing. And living the surrender experiment is how I even got here in the first place. I never would have imagined, if you had told me 10 years ago that I would be living
running a hostel in Costa Rica in the middle of the jungle,
I would have been like, Michael's in, you're crazy. Yet here I am.
So let me ask you a question. Do you walk outside and are there monkeys just all around?
Not where I am.
No.
There's a place called the Cloud Bridge that's just a little bit up the hill from me, and there's a ton of monkeys up there.
Oh yeah.
But what we've got birds, we've got armadillos. Ooh. I see our armadillos walking around often.
Cool.
We have really beautiful exotic birds. A lot of people come up to this mountain to do the bird watching. And if you feel inclined, you can research this bird called the mot-mot. It's like a very lucky bird to see, and they're all around.
Wow.
But
why is it called the mot-mot? Does it make a specific sound or something?
I don't know why it's called a mot-mot. That's a great question. Yeah. If you go down toward the coast and also like closer to where Donna lives, you're going to see iguanas and more monkeys and other kinds of birds like the macaws or the wacamayas. They live down by the coast.
Donna, you're talking about Donna Bond?
Yeah, Donna Bond lives in Costa Rica too.
Donna Bond, soul rejuvenator. Donna, we got to talk because I want to get you on my show. I know we kind of wrote some letters back and forth or something, but you're definitely meant to be on my show. When I saw your show, I loved your energy. And I have to say, how do I have to say this? I want to say it's in my mind right now. So I know for me, when I traveled, I've been fortunate enough to travel to Aruba, St. Martin, some really beautiful, beautiful places. And I've always felt like I don't want to leave. This is just phenomenal. But specifically when I went to Hawaii, Hawaii was literally like it opened up to me as I experienced it. It said, I am the Garden of Eden. And it literally was that because the trip involved a helicopter ride, watching the coast, watching the lava underneath the water, coming out under the water and hardening into rock and basically forming new land. And then part of that trip was hiking in Kilauea, which is like walking on the moon. It's like all lava, and it's actually an active volcano. There were places where I could look down and see miles down into the ground and see the red. It was mind blowing. But that lava right outside of the lava zone was a lush forest because the lava is such a mineral rich rock that breaks down into this soil that becomes so mineral rich that it's like the center of life, and where earth making new life. Like, it was just so spiritual. So I always said I'm going to end up back in Hawaii someday. I'm going to end up in Hawaii. But since a few friends of mine, Hardy and Alicia, and some people who have had on the show, Alicia actually has a house in Costa Rica, and I'm hoping that this trip just like maybe inspires me to, say, okay, I'm ready to live in the jungle.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I'm definitely ready to spend a good 5 or 6 days in the jungle for sure.
It's going to change you.
Yeah. I'm super excited. And we're doing, it's a retreat with, all different ceremonies of breath work. Hardy does an amazing breath work ceremony and exercises and all of that stuff. So it's a very intentional trip, not only for the soul, but just also to just relax in a beautiful place,
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about that.
Can I comment on something?
You could comment on everything. I've already told you that.
Okay, well, I'm just asking for permission.
Okay.
So this whole planet is the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
The whole thing. True wealth grows on the trees.
Would you just stop that? No, I'm just kidding. Don't stop that.
I won't.
Always,
I'm going to just proceed.
always remind me.
This whole planet is the Garden of Eden, and everything we've ever needed comes from the planet itself.
I love that view. I love the people who are here who are like, what do you mean heaven? This is heaven.
This is heaven.
This is heaven. I love that view. And you know what? I definitely do share that view. But I think you hear me say things and you're always correcting me because you're like, no, you got it wrong. This is the whole place.
Yes, but also everywhere.
Yes, totally.
But I do think it's interesting the way that we have maybe suppressed the capacity. I feel like, yes, we live in the Garden of Eden where true wealth grows on the tree.
Yes, and Tim, who lived in Brazil, he's in the States now, is going to show me around Brazil one day too. So.
Oh, thank you, Tim.
Yes.
Yeah, this earth has everything we need. It's got clean water. It's got fresh air. It's got living here. It's extraordinary because I can walk down the street and there's wild berries growing. I can just eat berries. There's bananas growing everywhere. Most of the plants are some kind of edible leaf, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't need a grocery store. Just go on a walk.
I love that. And part of my vision, part of that vision of me saying I'm going to end up on an island and that's going to be my life. Part of that is waking up every day and eating fresh pineapple, or whatever fruit it happens to be, in the garden. That's
this is a call to action too. If you live in a place that doesn't feel like it's the Garden of Eden, it's up to us to change it. Oof. There's so many laws in the States where you're not even allowed to grow food. You're not allowed to catch rainwater. There are literal restrictions to you utilizing the nature the way nature was meant to be utilized that makes us more reliant on grocery stores and food supply. And when our food supply is controlled the way that it is, especially in the United States, everyone becomes dependent on it. And if everything were to fall apart right now, very few people would have any idea what on earth to do. And that's not okay. We need our sovereignty back. We do need to know how to make healthy soil. Every single person on earth should know what makes healthy soil. Every single person on earth should know how to clean water. Every single person on earth should have access to clean water. Every single person on earth should have access to clean air. And if you're in a place where that is not the reality, guess what? It's not wait for someone else to figure it out. It is I will call the rain. Right.
Or go where I need to go.
Yeah.
Which is kind of where you are right now. I love that. I feel like you've got your finger on the pulse of the universe, which is awesome. And Donna Bond says monkeys.
Okay.
I love that. I love
this.
Suri, I wish it wasn't time to go.
I know, but it is. Okay, my last sentiment.
Try again.
Oh, and Siri just answered me because I said Suri.
Of course she did. This is like a call to action for anyone who's watching or anyone who watches in the future. The earth that we all crave and remember. I think almost every single person on earth has a memory of a place and time where there wasn't so much conflict or war or scarcity. We all remember it. Every single one of us do. And if we're going to tip the scales, it really will require every single one of us to awaken and to contribute to a fifth dimensional reality or a heaven on earth reality. And so if you ever feel like, oh, me and my individual self, like I can't do anything, that's not true. It's going to take every single one of us. And if all you do is make personal choices for your own health, you're doing enough. And then if you can start to make choices that amplify your own well-being and find that you have some extra energy to contribute to your neighbors, contribute to your neighbors. We don't have to do all this crazy outreach and try to solve the war in the Middle East. That's not necessary. However, right in your neighborhood, someone needs a hug. Right in your neighborhood, someone is hungry. And if first, fill yourself up. Second, see how you can contribute in the place where you live. And if each of us dedicated ourselves to that, could you imagine how quickly the consciousness would shift?
I'm going to say yes. I can imagine that. And I love that. Those words are amazing. I want to kind of end the show on that note because it's amazing. But I also want to say for a minute there, not this last part, but before, as you were getting into it, I almost saw a little bit of like, I don't want to use the word angry. I saw angry Suri, but like a more like concerned Suri, and I love that, and I feel like the way you did it was great, because like if that's angry Suri, that's awesome, because you weren't, that was very well put and very caring, right? It's not like you're an idiot because you don't eat right. It was like, hey, if you could eat right, it's the best thing that you can do for yourself. And that's also important. The way that you're presenting the ideas, I think, is also really important. I think, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. And I really appreciate you bringing that energy and that message to me, to my show, to the audience, to the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
really
much.
Awesome.
Thank you everyone for watching. We couldn't do it without you.
That's right. We absolutely couldn't. And don't forget, this is the only podcast that you're listening to that offers a 100% money back guarantee. Okay. If you're not satisfied, just write to me and let me know. I did it. I finally made somebody laugh with that joke. I always just say it and assume that people think it's funny, but I found it very funny. I think it's funny. Anyway, I know on Tuesday I have Maria Goncalves. I don't really know much about her, but I'm going to meet her, and you're going to meet her, and we're all going to meet her together. And until then, I will see you guys. Don't sign off. I'm just going to run the outro, but don't go away, Suri. And we'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Good night, everyone.
This is the theme song for the live stream of consciousness. You gotta ask yourself whether reality is a dream or you are dream reality. We're all a part of the answer to the meaning of it all. Come and join us for